All right, just want to welcome everyone here today. And as you can see, I've got Ilana, another fellow Aussie, with me. So, Ilana, why don't I throw it over to you? If you could just give us a quick 60-second introduction of who you are and what your experience has been inside of Google Ads.
Thanks, Aaron. Nice to meet you, everyone. My name's Ilana Wechsler. I'm the founder of teachtraffic.com. I actually used to work as a data analyst in corporate. So I'm not kind of like your classic entrepreneur people that used to work in corporate and hated their job. Actually, I used to love my job. But as a female, I decided to have a family and found the hard way that corporate life and family life are kind of like oil and water, and they don't really mix. So then I sort of entered the world of entrepreneurship and stumbled on Google Ads, which I actually felt like was a really good fit for my data analyst background. And for over 10 years, I've been running Google ad campaigns for clients, as well as teaching people how to run it so they don't need an agency. That's me in 60 seconds.
That's great. Hey, well, one of the reasons I wanted to invite you on to the channel is I really want to just go, really, all the questions we're going to be going through today really has a theme of building success for Google Ads in high CPC markets. I know that this is a common question that I get. I'm sure you would get the same as well. Obviously, this is probably more going to be slanted towards lead gen service-based providers. Not saying that it's not going to be relevant for e-commerce, but that's probably more where we're kind of sitting more today. So let's get straight into it. The first thing I wanted to ask is, what are the biggest mistakes that you see with Google Ads when it comes to operating in a high CPC niche?
Excellent question. So I see a lot of classic mistakes being made, probably the biggest one being going after the same keywords that everyone does. As we all know, Google Ads is an auction, and therefore the high CPC keywords are ones that everyone is bidding on. And so if you're a plumber or a lawyer, everyone's bidding on, plumber Sydney or plumber Brisbane or lawyer Sydney. So whilst that keyword might be relevant to your business, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the only keyword you should be running. And I kind of like to zig while others are zagging. And so often I don't even engage in those types of keywords and go after like a big topic like lawyers into the subtopics. So people just think too vanilla. They think too kind of like, yes, some people are searching for those kinds of keywords, but there's a whole bunch of people who aren't even bidding on other kinds of subtopic keywords. So that's probably the biggest mistake I see people make.
Yeah, I remember like in my story, the first Google Ads campaign I ran was actually for our business, which was a villa resort in Bali. And we were going up against multinational. I used to joke with my wife that we're going up against multinational companies like Marriott and Sheraton and all those brands that our advertising budget wouldn't even cover their coffee budget for a day. And so one of the things that I looked at there is we really put a terms of reference around is that we don't want to win the war. We just want to go for specific battles. And I think that's what you're talking about there, is just really choosing what keyword themes you want to own. And they may not be the high volume ones. They may be the lower volume ones, because that's where you can get some more success.
Exactly. And I think that's where Google Ads is really incredibly powerful, where you can go after the long tail type keywords, which is kind of what you're talking about. So not these really short, high volume keywords, the long tail that have less volume, but more intent and way less competitive.
Yeah.
So for any of your listeners who are in a high CPC niche, don't be discouraged. Actually, I love high CPC niches because that shows that there's opportunity. So think about your big topic and how you can break it up into the subtopics and even the subtopics within the subtopics. Yeah. And yes, you might get less volume, but I can assure you, you won't pay nearly as much, and the conversion rates generally are better, which I'm sure you would agree with.
Okay, great. So you've mentioned lawyers there. So let's just use that as an example. So for service-based lead generation campaigns, we'll use the example of a lawyer, because the reason for that is I know I've done some lawyer campaigns as we're talking off camera. You've done some lawyer campaigns, and the CPC can be like over $100. Some of them are ranging at $150 per click. So what strategies beyond what you're talking about? So we might even be getting into sort of starting out. Keyword research is really, really powerful. And finding those lower volume niches. In terms of account structure, like where are you starting your marketing inside of Google Ads?
Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of strategies. Firstly, I would say to people, you could possibly experiment with those high CPC keywords and see if they convert. At the end of the day, it's all about how much you are acquiring that lead for. So I don't pay much attention to how much I'm paying for a click. It's all about that cost per lead or the conversion rate. How much we're paid for that lead. That's the first thing. The second thing I like to do, let's say for lawyers, is let's say we do Sydney, just because that's where I'm based. I create what's called a suburb campaign. So we might sort of in one campaign bid on Lawyer Sydney, but then I'll have a separate campaign where I bid on various suburbs around the location that they're located. So if I'm in Bondi, let's say I do Lawyer Bondi and the various, densely populated areas, way lower CPCs, as we've mentioned before, lower volume, but generally speaking, you won't pay nearly the level of cost per click than you would just for the whole city. So think of little pockets of a city where they're sort of quite densely populated. Like, so for example, Parramatta in Sydney is sort of like almost like a second CBD, and you won't pay nearly as much. As I mentioned earlier, I would break your big niche into the sub niches. So think of the specific services your legal practice does. So for example, if you're a property lawyer, you might be, you do conveyancing. You might also do wills and probate work. You might also do contract evaluation. So bid on those types of specific services within your niche. And then you can combine those sub-niche topics with the suburb as well. So you can kind of combine those types of queries as well.
So you're breaking out, sorry to interrupt there, so you're breaking out individual campaigns so you can control the budget. And then say, for example, like a Parramatta, you might have ad groups around the different services that you're providing.
Correct. I would separate them by ad group purely because I want my ad copy to be relevant to that keyword in there. So I might say Lawyer Parramatta, and in a different suburb, I would do Bondi Junction. I would say Lawyer Bondi Junction, knowing that client can service really any of the locations. But it for the user, it looks like it's hyper relevant to them by them including that location.
And then I'm assuming the benefit of that is as well as because it's broken out by separate campaigns. If you see, as your example, Parramatta's being really, really successful, you can then go, well, we're not cutting through in Bondi, so let's move that budget from Bondi and go all in on Parramatta.
Correct. Usually there's 3 reasons I would separate something into separate campaigns. The first would be for different location targeting. So obviously my regions are going to be different. The second would be I might want to do a different bid strategy. So I might, for Lawyer Sydney type campaign, I might not want to do an automated bid strategy because it's going to go crazy CPCs. I might want to do manual CPC bidding just so I don't overpay. But my suburb campaign, I might want to do an automated bid strategy knowing that it's not going to go crazy because it's not that competitive. And so therefore, that would be another justification to separate those types of keywords into a different bid strategy. And then the third reason why I would separate campaign is to assign different budget to different kinds of keywords. So for example, I want to make sure that my keywords that are converting really well, be it my Lawyer Parramatta, never run out of budget. If I were to put them in the same campaign as my Lawyer Sydney keywords, what would probably happen is my high traffic keywords would steal all the budget, and then the other ad groups or keywords wouldn't get any love and attention, which I want.
Hey there, Aaron Young here. Thank you for watching this interview. And because you are still watching this interview, it's letting me know that you are really interested in learning everything that you can about Google Ads. Now, I may be biased, but the best place to learn Google Ads is inside of my paid community, which is called 10x Google Ads. And the reason for why this is such an amazing community is because not only every month do I give exclusive masterclass trainings on Google Ads that I don't share on YouTube, plus I also run live group coaching calls every month where I complete community members' Google Ads reviews. Plus, you can ask me any questions that you have about Google Ads. There is also the amazing community feed. And this is a private Google Ads feed where you can upload screenshots and you can ask questions. And not only me and my highly qualified Google Ads team, but also you get support from over 400 individual members. It would be my absolute pleasure to see you in my paid Google Ads community very, very soon. And the best thing is that you get all of this for less than the price of a cup of coffee every day. So why don't you switch out your daily cup of coffee for the best Google Ads training knowledge that you'll get anywhere in the world. And if you want to get an exclusive discount, all you need to do is to follow that link in the description below, and I'll give you a lifetime discount to my 10x community. All right, let's now jump back into this interview.
The other strategy I also like to adopt for high CPC industries is, I don't know about you, Aaron, but I love a dynamic search campaign, actually. When they first came out, I was very skeptical of Google. I thought, oh God, this is going to be terrible. Google's just going to steal my money. But over the last few years, it's actually improved considerably well. And I use them not to compete with my other campaigns, to run in conjunction with them as really a keyword discovery tool. Yeah. So for your listeners who aren't aware what a dynamic search campaign is, essentially you don't bid on keywords. You give Google either your entire website or specific pages on your website. And based on the content on those pages, Google will decide what to bid on. And what I've discovered is that it reveals search terms or keywords that aren't picked up by the keyword research tools because they don't have enough volume. But actually, I discover keywords that I wouldn't have found otherwise that actually convert really well. So I've actually rolled that out in my agency and for people who I help teach traffic, saying run a dynamic search campaign, not to compete, it's more in conjunction, and that will be your source of really good keyword research, and you'll get real data. And I find they work really, really well.
Yeah, no, we do use them. And probably one of our best test cases that we shared to other clients about this is that we had a client and they were in the heating niche over in UK, and we set up a dynamic campaign. When we do it, we do set some extra parameters. So we set the dynamic campaign for only to bid on new customers. We also as well will add in any exact match keywords that we're targeting in our other search campaigns as negative keywords. So we're really forcing it to pick up new traffic. One of the best examples we had is there was a page on their website, which was a calculator, which basically worked out what size of a heating unit they needed. And it was just, we started noticing it convert like crazy. So then we took that keyword and added it into its own search campaign. So yeah, so no, we definitely, we think that's a really, really underutilized strategy. The only thing we would say there is you do have to make sure you've got a good website structure and you've got good content on your pages. Otherwise, it just doesn't know what it's going to be picking up and targeting.
I would completely agree with that. But you could certainly have a look through the search terms to see if Google's getting it right. And if they're not, it's like, right, I've got to improve the content on my page. And one tip as well is if you do add your entire website, which sometimes we do for some clients, I would remove certain pages from being indexed as well, like your privacy policy page and your thank you pages and all that kind of stuff. You know, definitely don't want to be sending traffic there. So those would be like, I guess, the way I approach a high CPC client. Another strategy I also do, and I did this probably more when I was in dental. I used to specialize in Google Ads for dentists, actually, which is not as expensive as lawyers. But what I found was a lot of the advertisers would run out of budget quite early on in the day. So I created another campaign, which only for emergency type work, which only turned on at like 5 p.m. when other advertisers had run out of budget. And by putting it in its own campaign, it had its own dedicated budget that turned on at that hour of the day, and it was less competitive. That's another little tip as well.
While we are talking about campaigns, let's jump into this, because you've got your search campaigns, your dynamic search campaigns. With that, are you using call-only campaigns, or how do you sort of have that relationship between your responsive search ads and call-only campaigns?
I don't have a lot of success with call-only campaigns. I don't know what your experience has been like. When they first came out, I was really excited about them. I thought, this is going to be fantastic. This is all what client wants. Clients just wants the phone to ring. But what I found was that unless you're really, really clear in your ad copy that they are calling that business right now, people clicked on the ad, and so the advertiser was charged. The prompt comes up on their phone saying confirm or cancel, and they hit cancel. And so therefore my client was getting charged and no call was coming through. So I found them not to be that great. I don't know what your experience is like, Aaron.
Yeah, we found it niche specific. So we thought we found it definitely in emergent, like sort of more service spaces. So moving away from lawyers, probably more into things like, we had some great success with blind companies, with like waste removals, things where people are like, they want it now. That's where we found great success. We did have to find that as well, that generally when we would roll it out, we'd say to the client and give them a big warning, for the first 2 months, you will be getting some spammy calls, because what we do once we'd get it set up, we would then really leverage heavy on the report editor, the core details report, put in the core details. And it did take some time working with the clients and going, this phone call, because you can see the phone number, was that a good lead or was that a bad lead? Was that a good lead and that was a bad lead? And what we found, so it was very much what we'd say is, you're going to get some fake calls, you're going to get some rubbish calls, but if we can refine this down, and generally what we're saying, after a good 6 to 8 weeks of data, we're able to really just focus on 2 or 3 keyword phrases that were generating the call conversions. It did take some time, and you have to have a client that's prepared to, one, put up with some lower quality calls, but also help us on the reporting side. So we would give them a Google Sheet and would export the call report to a Google Sheet with the phone number, and then they would manually go through and mark it and go, this was a good lead, this is a bad lead. And then we'd just look at the trends. These keywords are generating good calls, these ones are not. And then, we'll then really, most of the time would only be on a couple of keywords that we would focus on.
Yeah, interesting. I tried it for a plumber client of mine, and that is north of $100 a click.
Yeah.
And it just like, the client was like, nah, we're not, like, as I said, we had a lot of costs incurred, and the people just didn't end up following through with the call. They just hit cancel. So it was very weird. Even though we explicitly said in the ad, click here to speak to somebody now. How else am I going to frame it? Yeah.
So we also find in an area when we do it as well is generally we're going really, really close to the location. So we're not doing citywide, but generally just doing really, really small little pockets. But it's definitely different industry, niche to niche. I would say to the call campaigns, I find with your responsive and your search, you kind of got a better template that you can just go, we know this is going to work. The call campaigns, you do have to, I guess, fiddle around with them a little bit further. But for the clients that we've got them to work for, it comes back to like CPC is generally double or 3 times as high, but cost per conversion is down like sometimes 50% lower. So it's definitely worthwhile.
Interesting. Yeah. Maybe I need to revisit it.
Yeah. All right, let's now talk about, we did touch on it before. So we've spoken about the way that you go about budgeting and keyword targeting. I'd really like to now talk about 2 things. Firstly, what are the best learnings you've found with ad copy to really get a cut through and good conversions with your CPC, high CPC niches?
So with my ad copy, obviously it very much depends on the niche. That's a given. It's quite interesting because for the suburb type campaign that I talked about earlier, we make sure we include that suburb in the ad copy. So where we're bidding on, lawyer Parramatta, we would have Parramatta in our ad copy somewhere. This forces really good ad relevance. We get a high click-through rate. We're then rewarded with a good quality score, which does, we get the lowest possible CPCs. So I'd make sure I do that. And it really depends on the, and what I actually found when I was more in the dental niche is that when we were sort of running ads in more affluent areas, we'd split test the ad copy versus more sort of working class areas, where in the affluent areas, we would say things like, state-of-the-art technology, and sort of kind of go after that type of messaging in the ads. Whereas in the sort of less affluent areas, when we tested that type of ad copy, it didn't work nearly as well from a conversion rate point of view than when we did, payment plans available. We talked about being affordable. So in terms of ad copy, it depends on the niche that you're in.
Yeah.
And it ultimately depends on what are the pain points of that target audience. So for a lawyer, for one client of mine that they're family lawyers, they have different worries and concerns and requirements than somebody who's just a standard solicitor for getting their will done. So, but generally speaking, we'd like to put the keyword that we're bidding on in the ad copy as one of the headlines, and we often pin that headline, and then we use a lot of the benefits of that particular client over the features. I also would recommend for your listeners to really look at what your competitors' ad copy is.
Yeah.
Definitely don't copy them, but look at kind of what angle they're doing and try and think how your ad copy can stand out from them. You need to know the lay of the land. You need to know what other people are seeing that is going to entice someone to click on your ad over your competitors.
That's something that I recommend a lot of our clients is, do a manual search.
Yep.
And I always frame it as try to say something that they're not saying or they can't say. Yeah. So I learned this really, really early. I mentioned to you, one of my first campaign was for our own villa resort, and this was probably like the first key learning. I went, we're not getting click-through ratio, and obviously over there it was all about 1-bedroom private pool villas, and so we went through. Everyone is saying 1-bedroom private pool villa. So I went through, how can we say the same thing but saying it differently? Yeah. And so we dubbed this line, which is it's like 12 years later, it's still our best performing headline. And that's skinny dip in your own pool. And
I love it.
Yeah. And that was this, and it still stands out and it still absolutely kills for us because we're saying it's a private pool, but we've just flipped it and saying it in a separate way. The other thing that I always look at is, say something that they can't say. So that's where I go, pull out, like if you're offering payment plans and no one else is offering payment plans that you're saying, you put that in the ad copy. And they're the two two big things that I really focus on.
At the end of the day, like, people skim read ads. Like, they're not going to read it word for word. So, like, skinny dip in your own pool, like, that's a scroll stopper. Like, everyone would stop at that ad and be like, oh, well, you got my attention suddenly.
Yeah.
So your enemy is their thumb or the mouse. So that's the way you have to think. So I think that's a really good example.
And the thing that this is what drew me to Google Ads is especially at the start when we didn't have much budget, even with like Facebook ads and things, like we didn't have the editing team to come up with pretty pictures and videos and all of those things. Obviously not saying that platform doesn't work, but the thing I loved about Google Ads is that it's an equal playing field. So the big companies, they can spend more, but they've still got the same font size, they've still got the same font color, still got the same character limits. So if you're prepared to take the time and really cultivate and craft some different ad copy, it definitely makes a big difference.
Yeah. One thing I should add as well is, I'm sure you'll agree with me here, is like, make sure you enable all the possible ad assets you can, just to take up as much real estate as you can. Doesn't cost any extra. If anything, Google's going to reward you with it with a lower CPC. So all those ad assets, the structured snippets, the site links, the call outs, whatever you can, just stuff more real estate in your ad so that essentially you're pushing people further down the page, at least on a mobile. If you do all of them, you could basically dominate the entire screen on someone's mobile phone.
And I use the exact same term about screen real estate, especially on mobile. If you get the number one position and you've got all of your site links and your call outs, you're taking, like, I've had a look at, the phone's getting bigger and bigger, but you are taking a good, for sort of 50% of that screen, sometimes even more.
I think even more. I did it on my phone recently, and it was basically 90% was one advertiser, and it doesn't look like an ad really.
Now let's move. You've got the click. You've got the keyword targeting right. They've got your ad. You've clicked on the ad. When they get to the landing page, what are some, have you got any sort of guiding principles or key strategies that you've really found have helped get that conversion once they're on your page?
Yep. So for a local type business that we've been really talking about this entire episode, having that phone number visible at all times, I personally think is really, really important. Generally in the navigation, a sticky kind of navigation, make sure it's clickable. You'd be amazed how many times I go to a website and the phone number's there, but I try and click on it on my phone and I can't. It's not clickable. And then someone's got to manually remember it. I'm a big fan of having a video on a website.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, whatever you can do to sort of get out from the safety behind the text of your website and say, hey, I'm Ilana, this is me, this is who I am, is going to really improve the conversion rate. And I think for high CPC industries, people want to know who you're, particularly a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
They're trusting them with a lot of important things. They want to know who they're dealing with. I am, particularly for high CPC industries, a fan of making the most of the traffic we are buying. And often we will implement some kind of what's called an exit pop. So when they're about to leave the website anyway, some kind of either call to action, be download this ebook or book a free call or something. There was a lady I was helping in Teach Traffic. She was in the financial services industry. So also high CPC clicks, because it's a recurring kind of business and clients are worth a lot to these people. And we shifted the focus of trying to get them to become a client straight away to just book a free 15-minute call. So rather than go straight for the sale, it's like, well, let's meet each other.
Yeah.
And we implemented, as I said, the exit pop as well, just to book that free 15-minute call. And it really transformed the conversion rate. And on that call, obviously, they are then selling their services or some kind of free audit or something like that.
And that exit pop, is that done by time or is it done at a certain part of the page? How are you structuring that?
It depends on the business. The exit pop is when they're leaving the page. So it's not really time-based. You can make them time-based, as in to only show after a certain period of time, and you could exclude pages. So if they kind of make it to the contact page, you wouldn't have an exit pop because they're there anyway. You can slice and dice it however you like. But I just found that was a really good way of getting the most amount of like really expensive traffic, because some people aren't ready to contact you or aren't ready to buy. So at least if you could kind of get their name and email address to follow up later, that was getting the most amount of reward for the traffic.
And I love that strategy. I mean, that's something that we've implemented into all of our business, and some with our for our own brands now, we don't even go for the sale. We go for we're promoting a, extra training, which is free training, high quality training, because it's obviously you're wanting to, get the email to build a relationship, and then the sale continues on. And that's what we really talk about, is getting businesses to build their own audience and own their own audience. So even, YouTube, we're on YouTube now. YouTube followers subscribers are great. Podcast downloads are great, but ultimately, until you've got their direct contact details, you don't own that audience. So that's for businesses, especially service-based businesses that have reoccurring services. It needs to be a big focus for lead generation.
And then it enables you to buy more traffic, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're building a database, that's an asset that you own. You can maintain communication and build a relationship with them over email. So when they are ready to buy, then you've got the ability to get in contact with them rather than hoping they're going to search it on Google again and then click on your ad, etc.
And then stopping them from even doing the Google search. So if you become their trusted service provider, they're not even doing the search, they're just contacting you straight away.
Exactly. And I think you raise a really good point of making sure that free training or whatever it is you're giving away for free is really high value. So the common, failing that people do is, I'll just give them anything. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It actually does matter, because that's their first impression of you. So you want to make that a really good experience with people. Give a whole bunch of value for free, and then it's going to be an obvious choice that they'll choose you.
It's the analogy that I always give. Last year, my wife had 20 years of marriage, so we went over to Europe for the first time. If you put up with me for 20 years, you get to Europe. Yeah, thank you. And this is the perfect thing. We saw, you go through new towns, new cities, you don't know what to eat. And all the tasters are coming out, try this little bit of pizza, try this little bit of pasta. And the one that tasted the nice, it was literally the first person that gave us something that we enjoyed. Yeah, we're eating there. And it's the same with so if that freebie is not of value or quality, it actually does the complete opposite, and you're actually burning a relationship before it's even started.
Absolutely. I would add one thing as well, is I think more and more people are adopting the fact that they'll just book an appointment online, be it in dental, in legal, or many of these other services. So whilst you may want to generate calls, and I'm not saying you don't have your phone number visible and clickable like I mentioned, I would also make the option available for people to be able to book themselves in for whatever appointment they want, be it a Calendly link or something like that.
Hey, Ilana, do you have any final thoughts or anything extra you want to say? Just recommendations for people of how to approach the high CPC market.
Yeah, I would say don't be discouraged. If anything, I get excited when I see a high CPC niche, because that obviously means people are making money. I would get more concerned if it was really cheap and there's no advertisers there. You just kind of got to think a little bit left of center. And so obviously listen to the strategies that you've presented and I've presented. And the biggest thing is I would just break a big topic into the subtopics, and then the subtopics even within those subtopics. The long tail will add up to be something sizable. And I would say, don't have to pay the high CPCs like the herds are doing. You just got to think a little bit differently, think creatively.
And I love it. And the thing I always say with Google Ads, I approach it like a jigsaw puzzle. It's like you can make it work, but just sometimes you've got to have every piece in its right place for it to see success. But some people, and that's why I enjoy it. I always look at it as, right, how are we going to solve this problem? All the way down from the cost through to the ad copy, through to the landing page. Hey, Ilana, it's been absolutely wonderful having you here. For everyone watching, if you go down to the show notes, into the description, you're going to see where you can follow Ilana on YouTube and her website, and where you can get in contact with her wherever she is in the internet. So lovely having you here, and it's always great to have another Aussie here on the channel. Thanks, Ilana.
Thank you so much.